So we can go into it and feel free, sir.
So you have the camera on?
Sir, all I could do is basically change the ambiance in some regards. I don't want nothing behind your head, except for us. And we could keep going, sir. You can like tell them.
You do have the camera on?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Well, we are.
Might I request that for purpose of this film and Benjamin be persuaded to remove his hat?
No, I don't remove my hat. I'm not removing my hat. Tell him to remove his hat. I'm not removing my hat.
You would.
You will let him.
It's a kufi.
Let him. I'm not moving my hat.
It's a kufi.
Right,
on
now,
second thought, Benjamin, if my head looked like yours, I'd keep my hat on.
You obviously have no idea how your head looked. If my head looked like yours, I would have on a hat. Listen,
you were asking the location, true?
Yes.
Let's locate.
We are in Amherst. Actually, we are in Pelham, at the home of Kwame Michael Thelwell, the Moor of Pelham, impecunious scrivener and wise man. I first met him 53 years ago at a conference at a place called Sugarhill Academy. It's a very upper-class, private New England school. It's the school of Jackie Kennedy, where Jackie Kennedy went to high school. And we were there for a conference at the founding of an organization called A Better Chance, which is known as ABC. Its objective was to take intellectually talented black kids from the inner city and give them an upper-class education, first through these prep schools and then in the Ivy League, which would be paid for by this foundation. One of its best-known graduates is the first black governor of Massachusetts.
The first and only.
Yeah, the first and only. Well, what's his name again? Duval Patrick. Yeah,
he was very bright.
Yeah, he was the son of Patrick that plays with Sunrise Orchestra. His father was a reed player with Sunrise Orchestra. I tried to think of his name, but he was the son. In any case, we were there because they had asked Mike to be an advisor to the program.
You don't want that share.
And he had said to them that we don't want any Indian school type situation where you take our best and bright kids and put them in these white private schools and turn them into white people and they become useless to us. So if you're going to do this, you need to have some black studies in these schools, which is a story that few people understand, that the first black studies programs in high schools were in these elite upper class schools, and it was largely because of Mike insisting upon it, because they were bringing black students in there. So we met at this conference, and he was there to give a lecture on black literature and its cultural roots, and I was there to give a lecture on black history, African and Afro American history. We didn't know each other, which is very strange because we had a very close mutual friend, Hank Thomas, who was a heroic figure, in the civil rights movement. Almost everybody has seen that picture of the blazing bus in a blazing flame in Anderson, Alabama, where they firebombed the first Freedom Riders. And he's the guy that's walking out of the bus with the flames and smoke engulfed, walking into this hysterical white crowd. That's Hank Thomas. And he and Mike were at Howard together. I didn't know that. I didn't know they knew each other. But later, when I found out that they did, Mike told me that Hank was the first black American student that he really gained respect for. And Hank told me that Mike could write when he first met him, when they were undergraduates at Howard, that he could write the way he could, when he became a professor, that he was always a great writer and always politically very advanced. And together they organized NAG. He can tell you about that. But the point is, I met him at this conference. And at first we didn't get along at all. Suffice it to say that we were two keynote speakers. We were at the head table in the banquet, and we came close to having a fist fight. The woman who had put the thing together, she said, "Oh Lord, if the two keynote speakers have a fist fight, we'll have to crawl out of here, in embarrassment." So we managed to quash that, but I decided this guy is a fool, and I don't want to hear nothing he's got to say. So I wasn't going to listen to this lecture, but the woman kept saying to me, you've got to listen to him. He's really brilliant. So I said, all right. I went outside, found a little bush, smoked some wisdom weed to calm myself, and came back to listen. And he gave a lecture on the cultural roots of black literature, looking at the folklore of black people all over the Americas and their African roots, their African origins. I'd never heard anything like it. You know, I thought it was the most brilliant speech I'd ever heard. And coming from this arrogant Jamaican whom I had just barely restrained myself from smacking, you know, I was really shocked.
That would have been
you know,
a very serious error on your part. We would have fucked you up.
So that's the way we were talking, right? You know, both of us was whipping, you know what I mean? So after I heard him speak, after his speech, there was a question and answer period. And there was one question that came up, which was a more of a historical kind of question. And so I got up to expound on it. And he's sitting there looking at me with that look, you know, he's got a contemptuous look like nobody. He's sitting there looking at me and waiting for me to fall. He says, waiting for me to fall on my face and make a fool of myself. And then he was going to say to me, don't ever presume to answer a question that's asked of me because, you know, you don't have the election equipment to do that. But see, when I first saw him, I was surprised he was Jamaican. He had on dashiki, and I said to him, are you Jamaican? He said, yes. I said, what you got on dashiki? And he looked at me contemptuously. He said, he had a ebony cane in his hand. He pointed at me, he said, there's going to be a black revolution in my country, sir. You know, and then strode off, and I said, well, get on with your bad self. and then we got in this argument, and almost came to a fight, and then I decided, the woman talked me into listening to him. I listened to him, I was astonished. So during the question and answer period, when I started to answer this question, he's sitting there waiting for me to fall on my face because he was convinced I was a fool, like I was convinced he was a fool before I heard him speak. But his brother, Richard, he has a brother who's like 6'6" and ebony black, you understand? The fact is, he was telling us about having gone to, he was telling us about having gone to, yeah, don't do it in front of the camera.
I'm sorry, I thought it was over his camera.
Yeah,
sorry.
He told us he had been to East Africa and the Watusis, their attitude was, well, you might not be from this village, but we know you from down the road somewhere. You understand what I'm saying? Because he's a tall, black, real-looking guy. So anyway, his brother said, who's an internationally renowned scientist, he's an expert on world water resources and a great athlete. So when I'm talking and Mike is sitting there looking contemptuous, Richard said, teach, brother, teach. You know, he shouted out a couple of times. So then I think that might have been what prompted Mike to actually wait to see what I had to say, you know. And so he sat through my speech. And when it was over, he came up to me, he said, well, brother, looks like we misunderstood each other. And then he said to me, he said, I noticed you quoted Dr. Du Bois quite a few times. He said, Du Bois is one of your intellectual heroes. I said, yeah, he's a great intellectual hero of mine. He said, well, I'm working on a project that might interest you. What are you doing right now? Well, this was 1969, and I had spent the decade as a disciplined member of the Revolutionary Action Movement. I was one of the founders of it with Max Stanford. Yes, a disciplined member of the Revolution. Well,
you have degenerated a great deal since.
So in any case, he asked me, he said, what are you doing? I said, well, I am a general without an army. I said, yeah, I said, I'm a general without an army. My army has been decimated by the forces of the state. So he said, well, let me tell you what I'm doing. And he told me he was looking to build this first full-fledged degree-granting academic department, to the Black Studies Department, and he wanted to name it after Dr. Du Bois. Well, this was unprecedented. I mean, first of all, there was no such thing as a Black Studies Department. There were Black Studies programs. I had seen many of them traveling around the country, and they consisted of, they were programs that, had somebody from the English department offer a course about black people, somebody from the sociology department, somebody from the anthropology. Everybody would offer some black-oriented course, and you would have a black professor who was the coordinator of it. But they were all elected, you know, and you couldn't get a degree in it. And Mike said, that's not what we want. You know, we want a real department. And so not only did we want a real department with a subject that was not even recognized in the university, but we had the unmitigated gall to want to name it after a single black scholar, Dr. Du Bois, who came from the Berkshires, not that far from here. And but Du Bois was a radical, and not only that, but he had put his papers under the executorship of Herbert Aptheker, Dr. Herbert Aptheker, who was the chief theoretician of the American Communist Party. So, you know, we were really, you know, we were really making, you know, he was really making quite some demands. And so when he asked me about coming